guests. We have some guest lecturers here brought to us by Zoom. I have Isaac and Jacob from Seattle. They'll introduce themselves a little bit about what their company is. Briefly, Isaac did work in San Luis Obispo for a while, and he's a grad of Cal Poly and has a strong background of what everyone is going through in our class as far as a student looking forward to a career. So that is a good place to start for sure. But why don't we go ahead and have you guys introduce yourselves, and why don't you describe and talk about your company that you have up in Seattle?
Go ahead, Jake.
All right, so we have a group of companies that work together, and so we have a construction company, an architecture company, and a development group. And basically, it's not a traditional design build. Traditionally, a design build company only does their own designs and their own construction. And we kind of evolved in the downturn to build with other architects and to design for other builders. And so the way we typically describe our group of companies is that we're kind of like siblings. We're able to date other people, and basically it's acceptable. And so we're not mutually exclusive. So
That's
it's
more
been great.
of a relationship concept.
Exactly, it's very organic. You know, the name of the company is Collaborative Companies. You know, so within Collaborative Companies is kind of the umbrella business. It's where we have our administration, and then we have Valor Builds, which is the construction company, Citizen Design, which is the architecture company, and the Collaborative Development Group, which is a kind of organically grew because we were working for other developers who said, you have to invest with us if you want to design and build for us. So we kind of evolved. We started to do pro formas, started to do a lot of the feasibility for them. And so we kind of have learned how to develop over time.
Nice.
And who are you again?
Yeah.
Oh, my name is,
Jake.
yeah, I'm sorry. My name is Jacob Young. I founded the companies in 2006 and started out in architecture. Graduated with a degree in business, actually, and political science. And after a year working at an 80,000 person firm, I decided to follow my true love, which was design.
Nice. Isaac, what about you? Give me a little bit of background and then talk a little bit about types of projects you guys are doing at Citizen.
Yeah, my name is Isaac Greenetz. I'm the lead designer at Citizen Design. I partner with Jake on the architecture side. And we have in our Seattle office, there's 4 of us. We partner with Ryan Ridley down in San Luis Obispo and his staff there. And we're doing a lot of different projects. I think that's kind of what the thing that kind of sets us up, sets us apart from kind of other traditional design build firms, in that we're doing multifamily, we're doing storage facilities, we're doing residential, we're doing remodels, we're doing commercial TIs, we're doing, you know, we're getting into the CDU world of the small efficiency dwelling units and kind of larger apartment buildings, so 30, 40, 50 unit buildings, 7-story, 8-story. And then, you know, working, you know, kind of, and because our clientele is kind of so diverse, we have developers that are also builders. So we're, you know, doing just basic permit sets for those guys and, you know, saying, here you go, and then they build it. So we don't really get into the construction documents. And then on the other side, where we're building it, we're getting all the way into all the CDs and the development. So we're getting into the details on some projects and just kind of getting them through the process on other ones. And so we've been able to kind of cast our net pretty wide in terms of the type of work that we're doing. And so it seems like every time we feel like we're getting good at something bigger comes along in the next realm, and we're constantly learning. So nice. We're always on our toes.
So as far as the build side of the company goes, is the build side just as busy with that variety of projects, or is there a specific type of project that is your wheelhouse for build?
Yeah, so we have 4 different teams within our construction group. And so we have a residential, multifamily, commercial TI, and industrial. And so, I mean, really, we were kind of a product of the downturn. Had 2 great years before the downturn hit. And so it grew out of really 4 or 5 relationships. There was an industrial mini storage we started designing for in 2011. Our bread and butter has really always been residential. And then because of the relationships we've had, we've grown into multifamily and then commercial TI, right? Breweries, coffee shops, restaurants. Yeah. And then so the multifamily, the commercial TI, the industrial and the residential kind of evolves now. Construction will do under 20 projects in a year. And the staff is about 12 people. Architecture, our staff is, I jokingly say it's 4.5 with including Brian, but in reality, we're actually designing probably about 75 to 80 projects a year. And so the turn rate for architecture is very fast in comparison. So our biggest project is a 125,000 assisted living facility. Our smallest project is a 300 square foot kitchen remodel. And so we sit at, and it's really a byproduct of having a lot of flexibility in our group and having people who specialize and remain generalists. I mean, we are a generalist practice, so it's both good and at times very hard.
So that's a good point to go off on. You say it's both good and it's bad. Can you give us, outside of what you're saying as far as the benefits of this, are there truly in your mind the benefits, like the greatest benefits to do design build and even to do design build and develop? Is it just because you can be nimble and can be flexible and wear a lot of hats? Where do you find the biggest benefit there for the way you set up your company?
So I guess we can break that into several parts. Like financially, it's very resilient, and so we always have work. And so if something dries up, let's say in this market right now, restaurants are dead, right? So all the restaurant projects going on are on hold, or have been put on permanent hold or temporary hold. At the same time, we've gotten 3 residential projects because people are going crazy staying at home, and so all of a sudden now we've seen an uptick in our remodel projects. And so basically, anywhere we are in the market, we've got an ability to stay busy. And so financially, there's an advantage there in being nimble and having multiple disciplines within the design group. The difficult part is that you're always learning. If we were to do all of our projects and stick to residential, I think that we would probably have all these processes that work really good for a residential project, but they can't scale up to, a $30 million building that we have going on. And so also we've got to create new processes. It's a whole new learning curve in terms of, whether it's fortunate or unfortunate in architecture, it's just not about design. It's also about project management and deadlines and, municipalities and managing multiple sets of sub-consultants. And so, when you've got 20 sub-consultants versus just 2 on a residence and 20 on a big multifamily building, it's a different animal.
Isaac, how would you answer that as far as the architecture side? Is there something, the greatest benefit there? Like, is there a benefit that you think is why you're in the business there?
Sorry.
Yeah, I think one really interesting thing about the way that we've kind of gone about doing our projects and the types of projects that we're doing, it's uniquely challenging from project to project because, like I said, we're constantly kind of growing in scale on the things that we're doing because we're getting better at the last thing and then doing the new thing, right? And so in that, there's like always unique design challenges with those different types of projects, right? Like the design challenges for a residence are way different from the design challenges for a restaurant, which are way different than the design challenges for a multifamily project. And Jake touched on it. Like we deal with probably 15 different jurisdictions here in Seattle and the surrounding cities. And so every different jurisdiction has their own little rules and idiosyncrasies on how they like to see, you know, their plans submitted, or what things they want to see in the drawings. And so we're constantly trying to perfect that that method and trying to perfect our process for being the most efficient at that, right? Because you know, like we'll submit something and like we used to, you know, hope that we could be able to get something through without any plan checks, but like it's literally impossible these days. And so right now we're just trying to mitigate that and try and as much as possible to put our best foot forward, put together a set of drawings that a builder will look at and be like, hey, this is a nice set, all the information is there. And then the planners can look at it and say, hey, this is a nice set, all the information is there. And we get a permit, and then we can kind of move on and get into the weeds of the details when it comes to time for construction. Having the construction team as part of the group has been kind of valuable because it's really easy to kind of look over your shoulder and ask the question like, hey, we're thinking about doing this detail here. Like, how would you guys put this together? Like, what's the best practice on this? And so having those guys kind of across the aisle from us has been great. And I think when we actually do collaborate on projects where we build them together, having us close to them has also been beneficial on the construction side, because now they're kind of like, they're thinking about design. They're trying to think about, okay, what would the architects do in this case? And so as we kind of work on more and more projects together, they're, you know, getting into the details and they're asking less questions because they're like, oh, you know, Isaac wants to see this thing this way, or they stopped asking what color they want to paint things in because they know the answer is going to be black. And so it's always a challenge, obviously, in going through those things and trying to be the most efficient. But I think our diversity has really allowed us to kind of grow in multiple directions and be good at a lot of different things.
Right.
You know, one thing I want to chime in is that I guess the one thing I didn't touch on is the fact that it's always interesting, right? That diversity. It's really interesting that you could be working on an apartment building, a 7-story building on one day, and then you're working on a house the next. And so there's a lot of interest in the variety. The other part of it is what Isaac touched on, which is the learning. I mean, the amount of learning has just been incredible, you know? And so that exposure to all these different markets and these different clienteles and client types and styles of architecture has really enabled us to really grow as a business and as a group. And then, you know, in terms of design build, you know, the consistency, a lot of times in design build, the traditional problem is that the architect designs something that a builder and really the client can't afford to build, right? So you'll see these beautiful things get designed, and then you actually see what actually gets built, and it's very different from what was designed.
Right.
And so when we're designing and building, we're working so closely together that the realization is that what gets designed actually gets built,
Right.
because we're working close together. And so that's been one of the real benefits of it all, which is really our original vision is it's much closer to what we design than sometimes we've experienced in the past.
Isaac, did you find that frustrating in past work, especially in San Luis Obispo, with some of the projects you guys had designed and then the contractor just biffing on the project completely? Or
yeah, I don't think it's something that you ever really get away from. Doesn't matter where you are. Obviously, projects with healthy budgets get done correctly, right? Projects with really good contractors get built well. But like you don't always get that combination, right? You always don't get the healthy budget. You always don't get the cooperative client, and you don't always get the good builder. And so when one of those pieces is missing, it's going to always be a challenge to kind of get your idea across. And I think where I found the most success in seeing things kind of completed or done the way that you want to see them done, is kind of being open with that dialogue with them and be like, okay, here's my idea, contractor or owner. Here's your budget, and contractor, here's how you want to build it. Like, you tell me how to build it. Like, ignore my detail. Here's how it wants to look in the end. Like, how do you get there? And they're like, oh, here's a better way to do that. And so that kind of collaborative process, I think I found the most success in getting things built the way that they're designed. Budgets are always going to get in the way. Contractors are always going to get in the way. Clients are always going to get in the way of the vision that you may have had in the beginning. And so it's about finding that balance and kind of finding that win at the end and saying like, yeah, this isn't exactly what I was going for, but like we got pretty darn close, and everybody's happy. I think that's really kind of like I think the goal at the end of it is like, we're trying to, work with people, work with contractors, work with developers. In the end, we want to enjoy working with them, and we want them to enjoy working with us. And so like, that's really our goal, is like this kind of client experience, or this experience of like, we want builders to look at our sets and be like, this is a great set of drawings. And so that's has been a secondary challenge to just doing the work, is like actually doing the work and documenting it well so that it makes sense to everybody, and everybody can have a positive experience.
Cool. Since you're the product of a recession and kind of working through the recession, what have been some of the things you've taken away as you've grown, both from a management side and a financial side? What would you say, how is your company organized management-wise and financially to make you guys so successful now? And what are those key takeaways?
I mean, part of it, and Jake will be able to speak the most to this, but like, if I can just kind of give some high level kind of points, we're very lean in terms of like our overhead and what we do. Like, we don't have a lot of overhead. We share our rent with the construction company and with the development company. We share resource with those guys. We have become really efficient in our process, and like, hey, you're going to come to us and it's going to cost X amount of dollars. We know exactly how many hours it's going to take for us to get through this process. And so we're able to kind of like trim the fat, if you will, and not have a lot of extra time and hours and energy that's put into things that aren't necessary. So I think that efficiency and that low overhead has really helped us kind of stay kind of under the radar in terms of hemorrhaging money when it's not necessary.
Right.
Jake?
Yeah. Just sort of build on what Isaac said. Process is, an example is we're incorporating our construction group in our process of design much earlier to get some early cost guidance. And so we really reduce the amount of iterations that it takes in design to get to a final product. And so that process, we've sort of have integrated design working with construction to really arrive at a conclusion, at an agreeable design that's going to fit within the budget and the client expectations earlier, which allows us to reduce our costs. There's not a lot of, we're really a press down management style. And so basically there's only 22 of us. And so it's not as if we're so big that we've got layers and layers of people. And so we give responsibility at a really young age to our staff when they come on. And so we allow them to grow and to try and to fail. And so everyone's kind of doing their part.
Right.
In terms of success, I mean, it's always going to come down to people, and so fundamentally, I think we've done a good job of hiring the right people and, trying to make sure the business is about the people and the people that work at it. And you kind of have those age-old work hard and do good work.
Yeah.
And so the business does share. So in terms of being lean, the business does share resources. And so the admin group is paid for out of the 3 businesses. And so it takes our overhead down to really, if you compare it, we don't have full-time employees. We don't have a full-time bookkeeper just managing our business. She's working on multiple businesses. And so it really reduces our overhead so that we're operating at a lean level.
Got it. And was a lot of that coming from your ideas during the recession, looking at things that worked well, or was this all learned by doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's amazing that you go through experiences like the downturn and you're kind of formed by it, even though you don't realize that the experience itself changes you because it creates, it requires you to be, ingenuity and creativity and flexibility and hard work. I mean, because at the time, that's what it took to survive. And so sharing resources was very common, self-performing, right? So at one time, the architecture company kept the construction company in business because architecture was busy and construction was not. And then fast forward 2 years, architecture staff was actually in the field building, and it was construction that was keeping architecture alive. And so it's like, it seems like they complement each other and they balance so that regardless of what we're going through, there's work to be shared.
So our students are going to get a little bit of a understanding through the idea that design build is it's a method, it's a delivery method. So as far as the clientele that you've got doing design build, and we'll talk about development in a second, but design build as your delivery method within your own office or your offices, what specific projects would you say have been, especially in the Seattle climate, the most fun, and I would say also the most interesting to work on from a design build standpoint? Because I'm sure you could, as a contractor versus an architect, say, you know, we enjoy this because it's X. But when you're working together, what project do you feel is the best synthesis of it?
Yeah, it's interesting because, like, I think, I mean, I've been here for a little over 5 years now, and in that time, the projects that we've done are, I would say, are truly design build, right? We've done a salon, we've done a restaurant, we've done a bunch of houses, we've done multi-family projects. So I think there's a broad spectrum of projects that we've done together, and in all of them, I think, yeah, it's again, like the challenges are always unique, but it's always really fun to kind of be there with the construction guys and kind of like see the light bulb go off when you kind of explain a design or why something is happening the way that it's happening. And then when they get that, it's just like, okay, then they want to make it happen, right? Because they understand the concept behind it. They're not just like out there like, I don't understand why they're doing it this way. Or I don't understand why this has to look this way. But if they understand all the things that led up to that and how it fits in with the composition and how the materials are all coming together and why that thing is, that has been really successful for me to see that process kind of continue to evolve, because, you know, it means less time on my part to have to explain the drawings, right? It's like there's this kind of synthesis that starts to happen where people are getting it, right? And that's where it's been really fun. And then the part of it that we always do, like almost on every one of our projects, we have an all hands day where it's getting close to the end and architecture goes out there, construction's out there, and we're all just kind of like helping bring the project across the finish line. And so we're staining concrete floors, we're building concrete stairs, we're cutting steel, and we're, you know, staining wood, and like it's just like we're out there doing it. And that's been really fun and rewarding because like we get to be part of the process in the end there. And then you know, it's kind of a great kind of team building thing at the end where everybody's together and we're hanging out. We're in the dark with no power, pouring concrete.
Yeah, that's I would say at this point in my career, I guess I'm a relationship guy, and so it's all about the journey. And you know, it's like you can point back to some cool things you've done that people really like, but you know, it's like Isaac, we're working on a salon. It's a Friday night. Me and another guy were pouring concrete stairs. Isaac shows up. We say, hey, we need help. He shows up. It's like 8 o'clock. He's in probably, you know, nice jeans, dress shoes. You know, he's got a black sweater on, and he just rolls up his sleeve. And we ended up working like till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning pouring those stairs because they had to get done. Yep. And that those kind of moments right there sort of summarize like the relationship, the work. You know, it's not as sexy behind the scenes as it is once it's done. Everyone looks at it and says, oh, that's so cool, but they don't kind of understand. But within a career, as we start talking to the students, like design build allows you just not to be a pure designer, right? Or sometimes it's a little bit broader net that allows you to find a niche in it, whether that's a project manager, whether that's, you know, a site lead. Like we've had grad students from architecture end up as project managers in construction. And so we had a master's grad, Michael, come in and started architecture, and then now he's working for the construction group. And so it, you know, allows a little bit of that movement within the career and the profession field that sort of offers a little bit people to gravitate towards what they're naturally gifted.
Yeah.
And interested at.
And along that same level, the idea of, you know, an architecture grad might be more financially driven or savvy when it comes to finance and pro formas. You guys have this interesting dynamic of having development. It said that it was based on your current clients saying you have to get skin in the game. But what have you seen as far as the projects that you're doing? What's been interesting about bringing in development into these projects? As far as like the dynamic of the company even.
Well, we always joke in the office, right? architects make $1, contractors make $10, developers make $100. And so if you want to make the most money, you got to be developer, not an architect. Architect has to be a passion, because it's beautiful and it's wonderful, and it's also, you're not typically
It's
going to
art.
retire, at 30. But I think, money is stressful. I mean, and that's one of the things is like, I always like architecture, like you go through a design process with the client and it's like a honeymoon. It's like you're dreaming together, you're creating art. It's beautiful. There's a lot of good feelings. And then construction is like you get handed a bag and you kind of got to try and break the bad news to the client that their budget doesn't work or whatever it may be. And design build offers both of those challenges. Development is where basically, you sort of look at your wife and say, we could be in trouble,
Yeah.
In terms of the risk just goes way up. And so there's, but at the same time, the money that you generate is the risk and reward goes way up. And so, how we evolved into that, how we kind of became a part of that was kind of organic. And it was very like, and I want to be clear that like our clients were investing millions of dollars and we were investing tens of thousands of dollars. So we were a very small part of that. It's not as if we're the big ticket like the people that we work for. But definitely as it's evolved, it's something that, for us, the light bulb has gone on that, hey, if we develop, we're actually going to control design and we're going to control construction. And so now we really have power or control on what we design, and we're betting that the market is really going to want that. And then, to sort of build into that.
Because we can spend more time at that point on the things that matter, right? And I think that's what gets lost a lot of times when we're working with clients and developers is like, we spend so much time managing the client or managing the developer or managing the process that like a lot of our budget goes out of the door just to like teaching them to what's going on, right? So if we can sit there and like and take all that time and energy that we're spending with the client and the developer and the jurisdictions and focus that back into design and construction and how to get this cool thing built, we've already kind of increased our potential for that project by 20-30% on how much better we can make it.
Yeah,
and the cost doesn't go up.
When we started going backwards in time, we realized that 30 to 40% of our time is actually spent with the client, not designing things and not building something. And so if we took that time and that money and actually put it into the product, into the quality of our design, into the quality of construction, then, either it's cheaper to build or there's more money to make based upon that. And so we just started, and then, in reality, the thing that we've really been frustrated with is that many times in design, you're designing with someone that's never done this before. So there's a whole education piece. And so sometimes the designs that we're doing and the things we're trying to do, our client is not interested in it, even though we know after 20 some years, this is really the best thing to do. And so, in the development, by developing, all of a sudden we're our own clients. Now we can really begin to build on our experience and what we believe is good design, and hopefully have a better product by taking that time and dedicating it to our product.
So what's the future goal here? Is it to have enough in your development side of the company to continue to do design build on yourself, like with your own team, or are you always going to be open to what were you saying, dating other people?
Well, I think from my perspective, if we have 10 projects, we'd like 8 of them to be our own design build. So we're designing and we're building. We're putting all this experience and these lessons learned into practice, and hopefully we can part of it will be about delivering affordable housing, right? We think that once you get into it, what we can do and the speed at which we can do it is going to enable us to sell affordable housing. The other part of it is that we also think we're going to be able to design really cool houses and really cool things that the market's going to want. And then we get to let the market decide what the value of that is.
Right.
But I'd say that we always want to be working for other people. We just want to be working for other people. Like a lot of architects, they spend 20 years to become successful, right? 20 or 30 years. And then at that point, they get to dictate to clients, this is my process. This is the way. If you don't like it, you know what? You can go find that kind of pizza down the block with another architect, but this is the way I do it. And so hopefully we develop that. We're always working with other people. We're always learning. We're always engaging our community. We're always serving it. But at the same time, we're able to tell them, hey, this is our process. This is what makes sense. This is what we've developed over the years. And it's not as painful of feeling like you're having to sometimes give control back to your clients because they're paying you.
Right. So, you know, this idea of you guys kind of presenting what the design build business model could be is really interesting, and I think the students are gonna really like to hear this idea based on what they've learned. So, you know, in the future, as they get into their careers, what would be your advice, just based on your own experience, if they were to want to get into design build? What would be your advice as far as finding a firm, finding a group? What should they look for? What do you think is important?
I mean, I think it's always important to kind of like follow what you're passionate about, right? And really kind of know what is it you want. That's really hard to do when you're right out of school, because like you don't know kind of what experience you're looking for, what size firm you're looking for. But I think the one important thing to kind of always maintain is like, hey, this is something that I'm passionate about, and I might not be doing it right away when I get out of school, but it's something that I'm going to be working towards for a lifetime, and I'm going to get to that point, and it's going to be something that will kind of grow and mature along the way, and might not start off the same way that it was when you began your journey. And so I think when you're out there looking for those things, it's finding a group of people that are like-minded, that you're comfortable working with, because you're going to be spending a lot of time with them, and that you're encouraged by and you're inspired by, because like if you're around uninspiring people, you're going to become uninspired. And so I think it's important to constantly be pursuing that passion, and constantly surrounding yourself with people that are also pursuing their passions. And that's something you kind of, I guess, can figure out in the interview process a little bit, or something you research, but it's not a really good answer to say like, hey, which firm do I go to? Like, I don't know, find out what they're into. But that's hard to do, because without being there for a while, you really can't figure that out right away.
Right.
You know, I think that there's a tension. Maybe first is to take a big breath, right, and to realize that you're not going to make a life mistake, you know, if you end up at the wrong firm. I mean, sometimes I think some of the students put so much pressure on themselves, like this is such an important, momentous decision, that if they make it and they're wrong, it could, you know, ruin their lives forever. And I think that that's not true. It's like, take a deep breath, you know, be present in your interviews. Don't assume your job's going to come to you, right? You need to knock on doors, and you need to pick a path and start walking at it. The best advice that I ever got was stick with it. You know, if this is your passion and this is what you want to do, you know, you may meander a little bit, right? I've worked at engineering firms. You know, I had a job fall through, and I ended up working at an engineering firm and working architecture within an engineering, I was not happy, but at the same time, I look back on it and I'm thankful, because it helped. I learned a ton about engineering, you know, and it was off the track that I thought it was, you know, where I wanted to go, but at the same time, it's worked out. And looking backwards, I've seen the benefit. Where at the time, as a young person, I was frustrated. And so it's like, but I've always sticked on that path, you know, I've been able to work for at least a half dozen architecture firms, seen things done at a small firm, big firms, and taken something from it as I've tried to find out what my passions are, because like Isaac said, it's really hard, I think, as a new grad to know exactly what you want to do. I mean, those are the few, you know, you get your type A architect students and then everybody else. And, you know, try and be honest with yourself, you know, don't be afraid to risk right now. And at the same time, enjoy the process. And then as you sort of get engaged in it, you're beginning to be attracted to certain things. And I've seen people gravitate towards pure designers, and I've seen people, gravitate towards kind of I would call it the project architecture, where you're more, you know, you're a little bit engineer and you're managing the process. And so you'll see even within architecture practices, people gravitate towards the things that they're really attracted to.
Awesome. Well, you guys have any other final comments? I'm going to share your website and some of the images that you guys have on this video of some of the projects you've done. But do you have any last words of advice or comments about your company and the design build process?
I think that my advice is don't be afraid to fail. I mean, so much of our life is defined by, associating. I mean, it's like even in architecture, right? We try and take a step back from our design so that we can honestly critique it, and so we don't assign our value as human beings and as designers with the product that we design. So that way it allows us to see our designs for what they are and not for what we think, that all of a sudden we're cool because we've got a cool product. Sort of separating ourselves from our careers, realizing that it's a process, not being impatient with where we want to be and where we want to go, and not being afraid to fail, and just getting up and persevering and trying again. I think that, the longer I've, gone in my career, the more I've realized is the people that stay and remain are the ones that become famous. They have their own style and they develop that, and it's not because they're more brilliant or they're more creative, or it's because they basically have stuck with it. And so I just encourage people to fail and fail gloriously.
Yeah, I think stay hungry. I think it's important to kind of constantly be finding new challenges and pushing yourself to be uncomfortable in design and trying out new things, because it's easy to get into that routine of, hey, this design or this thing works, and so I'm gonna just do that over and over again. It's about kind of pushing yourself and always trying to get to that point of doing the things that really kind of make you happy, because if you're not happy, then kind of what's it all worth? But finding the wins in projects, even though they didn't get built the exact way you thought they were going to get built, or didn't turn out exactly the way it started, looking back on it and saying like, okay, it didn't look exactly like I wanted it to look like, but hey, we got this thing done, or hey, we were able to get this material in there, or hey, like the client really enjoyed this in the end. So I think it's important to kind of just really stay true to yourself and continue being passionate about the things that you love to do.
Awesome. Last question. If there was another design build company or a company similar to yours that you guys really admire, who are they?
I mean, I think up in here in Seattle, Build LLC, they've done a lot of nice work, and I think that their process has really kind of defined them. They've also kind of changed course over the years, what they do and how they do it. But I think where they started and how they did it has really kind of been very successful for them. I think it's really interesting to watch them grow and see the projects that they're doing. Yeah.
Okay. Jacob?
Jake?
Yeah, no, I would agree. I mean, their community. I mean, so there's the design part, there's the build part, there's the community part. And I think the Build LLC in Seattle is a company that their ethos has been about giving back to the architectural community, designing a process, a good design, and so they're someone that we admire and we look up to. There's also Brad's company down in LA.
Yeah, Marmorad's.
I mean, talk about a design build company that's taken it to the very top stratosphere, from just a pure design and realizing that design. They really do beautiful work.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, thank you guys for taking the time. I appreciate it. And I will definitely pass along all the San Luis Obispo vibes to you right now.
We'll take it.
You still got some rain?
No, it's actually been sunny the last 2 weeks. I mean,
it's been awesome to watch from inside.
Exactly. Yeah. If it was raining overcast, I think people would be much more depressed.
Yes. Yeah, I imagine so. Well, stay healthy, you guys, and I'll be talking to you soon.
All right. Thanks.
Andrew.
All right. Thanks, guys.